Our reading from God's Word this morning is from the Old Testament, from the book of Proverbs, and it's 4 separate verses, starting with Proverbs chapter 12, verse 25. Anxiety weighs down the heart, but a kind word cheers it up. A heart at peace gives life to the body, but envy rots the bones. A happy heart makes the face cheerful, but heartache crushes the spirit. A cheerful heart is good medicine, but a crushed spirit dries up the bones. This is the word of the Lord.
As some of you know, I've been here before, and last time I shared about mental health, and that's what Ralph has asked me to share about again today. He's asked me to share about mental health because I'm actually a pastor that walks with my own mental illness. Okay, so I have bipolar disorder. Now, if you don't know what bipolar disorder is, it's basically a mood condition where you have extremely high highs and really low lows. Okay, so my mood can go crazy, and I'm doing my best to regulate it with medication and all kinds of other things. But basically, what it's like is, for me, I get really high. And what high looks like is that my mind races and my thoughts go a little bit wild, and I get fixated on little ideas that I think are vitally important. And if I don't do these ideas, something's going to go wrong. So I'll get fixated. And only last month, I was fixated on buying a multiple occupancy property in northern New South Wales. Okay? What I thought was going to be a great idea, because I sometimes get a bit sick of the traffic on the coast. I don't know if anyone else gets a bit sick of the traffic on the coast. I thought, okay, this is a good idea. What I'll do, I'll move down to northern New South Wales, and me and 4 or 5 good friends will buy a large property together, and we'll have an intentional community, and we'll all exist together and, grow vegetables and have animals, and it's only literally 1 step away from being a commune and 2 steps away from being a cult. It's a bad idea, but for that month, that's all I could think about, right? And then I fall off, and then I'm all depressed. I don't get to live in a commune. I don't get to go and grow animals. And, in amongst all the research, when I'm manic, I'll figure out that goats are actually the most profitable of the small livestock. And I'll think that it's my good idea to go and raise goats. Now, I don't even like looking after my dog. So looking after goats would be the worst. And so my life's like that. And it'll be really high. But then when I fall off the cliff, I get really sad. And I actually feel like I've got a broken heart. And I feel like I don't really want to get about my day. And I'd be happy to stay in bed. And I feel like I've got a sad heart and a downcast heart. And the interesting thing is, when I start using that phraseology, like a broken heart, a sad heart, a downcast heart, I'm not speaking about the biology and the anatomy, right? If my heart was broken, literally, the ventricles will be broken, the valves will be broken, I'll be having a heart attack. But that's not what I'm talking about, and that's not what those proverbs were talking about. There's something about our hearts that carry more than just blood. The verses where, anxiety weighs down the heart. A happy heart gives life to the body. A heart at peace brings cheer. A cheerful heart is good medicine. It's not talking about our physical hearts, is it? It's talking about our heart in a different sense. So there's something about our hearts that's more than biological. And I would suggest that today there's something about our heart that is the seat of our desire. I mean, what you really want is what your heart desires. It's like where your deepest longings lie is in your heart. You might say to a loved one, I love you with all my heart. And you might even mean it. And you're not saying to them, I'd like to spray ventricle blood on you. I'm not saying that. It's like there's something deep in here that's more than cognitive, that's more than my gut. It's like this deep-seated emotion. I love you with all my heart. And so I actually think that our hearts are what is where our desires lie, and where our desires lie is an indication of what we really love. It's what we really love is what tugs at your heart. And it's a consistent sort of teaching through the Bible and also through culture. They used to refer to the heart as the cardia, like the really real. There's a philosopher called James K.A. Smith, and he says that your heart is the epicenter of your longings. It's what you really, really, really love. He says you are what you love. And he stole that from Augustine. Have you guys heard of Augustine before? Augustine says that our identity isn't shaped by what we know, but it's by what we most deeply desire. You know, our hearts are more than just right thinking. Now, I don't know if you know, I'm from a Baptist tradition, and in the Baptist, understanding the Bible is like the top. And I'm not in any way going to mock the Bible, but it's almost like there's this competition of who knows the most verses happening. You know, who knows the Bible the most? Who's acquired the most knowledge? And I am not against knowledge acquisition. I've been to Bible college. I've got a bachelor and master's in ministry. I'm not against Bible acquisition, but our discipleship is way more than just a cognitive endeavor, isn't it? It's when the things we know become the things that we live out. And that's what it's like to cultivate your heart. You know, your desires govern what you do. You will do what you love. And here's the problem, or here's something I want to chat to you about today, is that our hearts are not just passively going to find good things. You need to cultivate what your heart longs for. You need to sow the desires into your heart. This is how it works. Have you ever heard the phrase that it's that everybody worships? It's just a matter of what you worship. You know, if you meet someone who's, doesn't even consider themselves Christian or any other religion, they're going to worship something. They're going to worship money. They're going to worship leisure. Whatever you put as your first priority is what you worship. And I hope as fellow friends and sisters and brothers in Christ here, we all worship Jesus. Hopefully that's our biggest desire, right? Hopefully that's our longing. We all worship something. And it's the same with our hearts. Our hearts are going to be drawn to something, whether we like it or not. It's up to us to make sure it's drawn to the right things. You can't just passively exist or it'll be drawn all over the place. Now, I tried to make a video to try to illustrate this. Just so you know, it is not normal to have a senior pastor with video making capabilities like you have in Ralph. Okay? Mine is not going to be as good. He is next level. He's a freak. His videos are better. Not just than mine, than everybody's. Okay? But I did my best. Check out this video. All right, I'm here in front of a church. Now, I don't know this church, but I've just heard that they've got a pastor called Ralph who's extremely handsome. So God bless whoever this church belongs to. But we're going to go for a walk and see what would happen if our hearts were just passively molded by the things we ran into as we go for a walk. Okay, so what would it be like if we weren't actively cultivating our hearts? Okay. If my headspace isn't good, maybe that'll tell me that I need a bigger house. That'll tell me that I need a better house. That'll tell me that I need a third house. This is telling me to buy expensive clothes. This is saying I might not be pretty enough. That's telling me maybe my beauty has to come from outside instead of inside. My life is not good enough. I need to travel to exotic destinations. Run a bit more, then you'll be happy. I didn't get the message the first time. Need some jewelry, Dave. Mix in some other worldviews, even though it might not be good for you, but at least it's trendy. Did I mention my house isn't big enough? Spend a day here because you deserve it. You're worth it. Anybody for some drumming and chanting? And someone lost their undies. This world wants you to worship it rather than the kingdom. And so, for somebody with mental illness, I need to be specifically careful about the things I allow to influence me. And it's not just for those of us walking with mental ill health, it's for all of us. Because I need to make sure that my desires are being formed by things that please Jesus. I need to make sure that my desires are being formed by things that are not just good for me, but good for the world, that they're good for people that I encounter as well. Your heart is being formed whether you like it or not. It is. Okay, and it can happen unbeknownst to you. So say you start working with somebody and they swear more than you usually swear. It may not be long before you're swearing more than you usually swear. And sometimes it's even subconscious. You're like, why am I finding myself speaking this way? What? It's because your heart is being molded, right? Your life is being molded. The things of the inside are being molded. So my first thing is that you need to cultivate your desires. You need to cultivate your desires. Is anyone here a gardener? In an older Christian church, I'm sure there's a gardener. Who's the gardener? There's a gardener. You go out there and you don't have the power to make the plants grow. You don't have the power to keep the bugs away. What you have is the power to cultivate, to water, to fertilize, and then leave it up to God. That's kind of like our responsibility with our hearts. Our desires need to be formed. Imagine if your life is continually chaos, if you're always around, negative people. Imagine if you're continually chasing money or watching shows about acquisition of property or going on holidays. You're going to find that what you think about becomes what you want. You're going to want the holidays. You're going to want the money, right? It's just a matter of training ourselves. So we can positively cultivate our desires, or we can negatively cultivate our desires. We can sow seeds of joy, or we can sow seeds of despair. So think about this for someone whose thinking is pretty messed up, right? If I get stuck, we might as well go back to the commune idea. Okay, you can't call it a cult. We'll call it the commune, all right? Imagine I get stuck in the commune idea and I am going to go live down there with my friends and withdraw from everybody else in society and have a beautiful community that there's going to be no problems, okay? That's what's going on in my head, right? What's going to happen when my neighbors in the street I live in now are a little bit louder than normal? I'm going to hate them a little bit more than I usually would, because I've got my mind in a utopia that doesn't exist. Does that make sense? I've cultivated my mind to think of something that's better than reality. And then I get stuck in traffic all the time. What do I think? There's no traffic on the commune. You know what I mean? It's like you set yourself up to fail by what we feed ourselves mentally, because it comes out in our hearts. Cultivate your desires. Nothing is neutral. Nothing is neutral. There's a lot of people who reckon, okay, if it's not good or it's not evil, it's okay. I don't think anything is not good or not evil. I think everything's got an agenda. Right? When you're doom scrolling through Facebook, right, you are going to come across something that's not good for you. Right? I'm going to tell you something, and it made me so angry. I was looking at communes on my multiple occupancy properties, okay, not communes. I was going through, and a 19-year-old Instagram girl in her bikini popped up on my feed. And I'm like, I didn't look at this. Okay? Now, you don't have to put your hands up, but I bet you 100% that if you've ever been doom scrolling, something popped up that you didn't ask to pop up, and it did in order to make you stumble. Right? So scrolling through is not neutral. Seeking out like a perfect world like I was is not neutral. Because what it does is it makes you dissatisfied for what you have now. Do you know the biggest problem with lusting after other people's things is it makes you dissatisfied for the blessings God's given you now? Doesn't it? You start looking at other people's things. I remember hearing someone say, what you need to do is covet your own stuff. So say you've got a red Commodore, you need to say to your wife one day, man, I wish I had a red Commodore. Or say you live in Burleigh, which some of you live in Burleigh Heads. You need to say to each other, imagine living in Burleigh Heads. Some people come on holidays from other countries to where you live. Right? We need to cultivate that sort of thinking because we can get negative about the very blessings God has given us. Right? I've got to watch this with my downtimes especially because I get depressed, but I live in a home. And I've got a home and it's got a pool. And in that pool we've baptized people. And then around the pool we've eaten food. And so I can look at my home and go, and it's the worst one in the street. Or I can look at my home and go, man, at least I got one. Because there's crew out there right now renting homes the same as mine for $1,000 a week, and they're not even good homes. It's about cultivating what you think, isn't it? Nothing is neutral. Everything is forming your heart and your patterns. Okay, so we've got to cultivate our thinking. We've got to use wisdom like the Proverbs to cultivate the way we think. If we don't know what to do in a certain situation, there's 31 chapters of them. Most of the topics in life are covered by a proverb. Okay, so we've got to cultivate our thinking, and then we've got to remember something else. Ready? So what you do does something to you. Did you catch that? Tell the person next to you, what you do does something to you. Okay. What you do does something to you. Right. Okay. What you do does something to you. Imagine this. Imagine you go across the road and you find a homeless dude, and your first reaction isn't compassion, but your first reaction might be like, he deserves it. Or he's annoying. Or he just needs to get a job, or he's choosing addiction and getting what he's deserving. All right, so maybe you don't say that, but some of us might, right? And some of those things might even be true, but as you walk past, you might have an attitude of contempt towards a homeless person, right? Now, you can't solve his home at that point in time, and you can't give him a job, most likely. But what you could do is meet an immediate need and bring him over to the op shop downstairs and deck him out in the best clothes he's ever had, get him a meal, and say, God bless you, and send him on his way. Now, you didn't want to. And that's okay, no condemnation. But maybe you see that same homeless dude a few days later and he's dressing well and he's still there, sitting there. And instead of contempt, you're kind of like, man, maybe his story has something to do with why he's there. And so instead of having contempt, you might take him to lunch and ask him about his life. And maybe you find out that his wife died and he's not handling it, or you find out something else and you're doing something, and it's great because it's helping the homeless dude, but it's doing something to you. It's cultivating something in you. What you're doing is doing something to you. You're going from a place of maybe contempt or judgment to maybe getting a bit of compassion. You didn't feel like it, but you do it once because you know it's the right thing to do. You do it 5 times because you know it's the right thing to do. But you do it 10 times and you might do it because maybe you want to do it. And you do it 20 times and maybe you do it because you love this person. And what you've done is cultivated an attitude that has taken you from being someone who looks at this person with contempt to looks at this person with love. And that's what we can do in every area of our life. One thing with bipolar is that you get friends and enemies. And that's about it. You don't really have in-between people, right? And when someone gets on the enemy list, it's really hard for them to get off the enemy list. And so there's some people I hate. I know I shouldn't. The Bible says I shouldn't, but they are there, and I do. And so and they're not welcome to come to the multiple occupancy property. They don't get a share, right? But what I try to do with the people that I've got contempt for is take them for coffee and try to hear their story, particularly if they're from my church. Like, how bad is it as a pastor when you hate your own flock? Uh, and then I'll try to hear what their life's like and why they are the way they are, and find some common points of connection. Okay, maybe we don't agree on everything, but at least we agree on the right football team or something, and you start getting something, and what it does is it changes you. What you do changes you. And a lot of the things in your life that you're struggling with can be changed if you implement processes now. And they may not pay off immediately, but they might pay off. Yeah. I have such a messed up head that I find everyone so normal. I'm so jealous of you being normal. Like, you don't hate people, you don't want to wrestle your own congregation. There's some people at my own church right now that I'm like, if I never see them again, that would be too soon, And back to Ralph. Ralph would never think that. He'd make nice videos to bless you. I'm just like, just get them away. But you start these habits, right? You choose. And this is the thing. This is where it all lands, is that the habits become automatic. Here's the weird thing. These habits become an automatic reaction. So do you remember when you first learnt to drive a car? Right? I learned to drive a car, and my mum was old school. Not like the mums these days who let their kids get away with driving an automatic. Have you seen that's a thing? Right? We didn't even have the option. Mum's like, okay, get in the manual. So we did the textbook test thing, and she's like, okay, you can drive home from the DMV, from the Department of Transport. I don't know how to drive. That's why you can drive home. And she made you just drive, and you're fumbling around with the gear stick and the mirrors and revision mirrors and people and getting tooted and trying to change the indicator, and it's awkward, right? We've all been there. Like driving a manual, learning anything else, it's terrible, right? So my mom was old school. She's like, it's sink or swim, you drive. I'm not even exaggerating. I promise I can't exaggerate. We're in church, so we have to be honest. 2 weeks after learning to drive, Mum took me on the Riverside Expressway in Brisbane, okay? Which is a hectic road, right? So I still remember freaking out. At the start, it was so hard, and we had a manual Holden Gemini. Do you remember those? Geminis were a car, and they did not have any help. There wasn't a reversing mirror or anything fancy. You had to wind down the windows like this. And then if you wanted to get in, you had to lean over and pull the thing up. It was so old school, right? And I can remember it being so scary. But, you do it for a little while, and you don't have to think about it quite so much. But if you do it for a long while, you don't have to think about it at all, right? Like, I bet that you've been driving somewhere, if you've been driving somewhere for a little while, like if you've been driving for a little while and you've spaced out, and then all of a sudden you're where you need to be. Has anyone had that experience? Where you're just like, we're here. Because you don't have to be like first, second, third. You just do it because you've done it a million times. And that same principle applies when it comes to our discipleship and with our mental health and with growth in any area, really. The first time, like I had a really bad bout of depression, which is when I found out that I had bipolar. This is all just a mess. And the first time I had to force myself to get out of bed, it was heavy. And it wasn't because I felt strong, and it wasn't because I wanted to. It was because I made a choice that it was the right thing to do. And then the next day, I forced myself out again, but a bit earlier. And got up, and I walked. And I had a friend who helped me, and he got me up, and he's like, okay, every Friday, Dave, we're walking on Coolangatta Beach together. And it was the last thing I wanted. I just wanted to stay in bed and hide from the world. And he made me get up, and he made me get fresh air, and he made me get exercise. And I hated him for it for the first few weeks because remember earlier, bipolar people love or hate people, right? So I hated him for getting me up. And then I'd go for a walk, and then I did it once, and he kept doing it 50 times. He pushed me through 50 times, and so many Fridays I'd be like, sorry, mate, I'm not feeling well, I can't come. He's like, I'll see you there in 20 minutes. Like, he was ruthless. But what he did was help me get from a place of choice to automatic. We've all got to do that in our discipleship, right? From where we choose to do it to where we want to do it. You know, it can be in our quiet time where we're like, oh man, I don't know if I can stop for 15 minutes. My mind is racing. But if you do it once and do it 4 times and do it 10 times, eventually it becomes desire. What we do by choice becomes desire, and we start seeing breakthrough. This is game changing. You won't be changed by Wednesday next week, but you might be changed in a year from now, or 2 years from now, or 5 years from now. See, is anyone here surprised at how old they are already? I'm judging by that. We are. I turned 20 at the millennia, the turn of the century. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's just a little while ago. Do you know that's 25 years ago? Right? So yeah, I'm guessing we're all a little surprised at how old we are already. But guess what? In 1 year from now, you're going to be 1 year older than you are now. And you'll be surprised once again how old you are already. That year is going to happen whether you like it or not. What you start doing today is going to determine what you're like in a year. I've given up trying to solve myself by next Wednesday. But by the time I'm 50, I'm going to be a different man. By the time I'm 60, I'm going to be off my medication in Jesus' name. By the time I'm 70, I'm going to be a grandpa that's running around with the kids, and they will all be in the love basket. I'll still be living in Eleanor, not on my commune, but God will have done something. Guys, 1 year's happening. 5 years is going to happen. What do you want to see change in that time? Cultivate your heart now. Start sowing seeds in your life now. If you're struggling with addiction, you might not be finished by Thursday. But maybe Thursday night you could go to an AA meeting and take the first step. No condemnation at those meetings. You take the first step, and maybe in 6 months you might have some freedom. Maybe you're like me and experience depression now and then, and what you want to do is stay in bed. But what if you made a goal that every day you got up 5 minutes earlier? In only 12 days, it's an hour earlier. Those 12 days are going to happen whether you like it or not. But you could be getting up an hour earlier. Maybe physical fitness is what's holding you back from getting mental breakthrough. And maybe you hate exercise. But maybe today, go for a walk on one of the world's greatest beaches that is 100 meters from this church building. Grab a coffee and sit out in the sand and breathe and thank God that you're alive. All of our issues are solved one day at a time. And that's what I love so much about God. And that is what I love so much about the power of His Holy Spirit in our lives.